Hey everybody, how's it going? I feel like I have not done this in a while. Well, I haven't done this in a while. I feel like I don't know exactly what I'm doing, which hopefully is not the case. Oh my, there is a delay, like a long one. Get YouTube up and running. I mean, the stream's up. I just want to, there we go. All right, well, no. Okay, now we're good. Janice, good to see you. Cynthia, glad you're here. Cheryl's with me. Sue from St. Joe Mo, good to have you. Sarah broke her leg. Ouch. Surgery Thursday at Seton. How did she manage that? Ben, good to see you. Hope you're doing well. Jennifer, glad you're here. Susan, good to see you as well. Tripped over the neighbor's dog. I've heard of so many people getting injured from tripping on pets. It sounds very painful. What just happened? Okay. Clicked on something and it said, oh well, doesn't matter what it said, does it? Still got a pretty good headache, but I think it's might be getting better. So started 2 o'clock on Sunday a week ago. So it's been a fun 9 days. Cheryl's enjoyed it. I'm very easy to deal with when I'm not feeling well or uncomfortable, not remotely a pain or anything like that. What's everybody else up to? This fine evening. No, not a sinus headache. Something unlike I've ever experienced in my life. Uh, it's a migraine in every way except that it doesn't respond to any migraine medication. So I don't know. I don't know. Keeping cool. Yep, it's starting to be that time of year. My watch says it's only 91 outside, but the high is 97, so that seems weird. It seems like it's normally as hot this time of evening as it is the whole day. Thank you, Janice. Appreciate that. We're supposed to drive to Indiana on Saturday and Sunday. I don't think I can do it right now, so we're kind of weighing our options. No, not yet, Cynthia. I've been pretty close to going to the ER. I've got a referral with a neurologist that was made like 2 months ago, but it's not for another 2 months. So I don't know. We'll see. Jennifer says she chews on a piece of raw ginger to get rid of her migraine. This one just doesn't respond to anything. I don't know. I don't know. Yeah, I'm on the wait list for all 3 neurologists at Scott and White who deal with headaches. So it's the good old American medical system. Get you in real fast after 4 or 5 months. My fault. I've had headaches for 10 years. I should have made an appointment a long time ago. But anyway, we'll get going here in just about a minute. Yeah, I thought about Seton or Ascension or one of the other hospital systems, but for better or for worse, Scott and White has all my medical records with everything that they've already tried, and I just feel like it would be a lot easier. Plus, I did call a couple of other places, and they've got nothing open, so I have made the calls. I'm sure if I went to the ER, they would be happy to run as many tests as I consented to. Thunderstorms on Friday and Saturday. That'll be fun to drive in. Janice is cleaning the kitchen after Dave had a steak and potatoes dinner. Sounds good. Sounds good. We will get going here today. Probably not going to have a super long lesson tonight, but I did not want to stop. We won't have lesson next Tuesday because I'll be in Indiana. So, assuming I'm in Indiana. And I didn't want to not have it tonight after not having it last week. If you can see behind me, you really can't, but they're still doing... Yeah, you can't see it. They're fixing where they tried to put in a new vent. So still working on AC stuff, but it's nice and cool up here, at least for the most part. So we're at Genesis chapter 43, verse 16. Good evening to our folks watching over on YouTube. Glad to have you. And you can see a little more of the chaos behind me now. Although not much. It just looks like I have a cute little backdrop up there. Anyway, Genesis 43:16, and we're hoping to get through all of 44 today. So if you will recall, Jacob's sons, his 12 sons, well, his 11 sons, because Joseph was, of course, sold into slavery for some silver by his brothers because they resented the fact that he was their father's favorite. That's the ultimate underlying motive for their sin in this particular case. They didn't do it out of greed. They did it out of dislike of the affection that Joseph had earned from his father Jacob by virtue of being one of 2 sons with his favorite wife, Rachel. So that's kind of what's happened. So in the meantime, Joseph has fared very well in Egypt. He is Pharaoh's favorite servant and has risen to the level of vice pharaoh or assistant to the pharaoh, or however you want to view that. The pharaoh puts him in charge of many things, and of course it takes him a little while to get there, but eventually he gets there. And it's sort of his wisdom and his God-given ability to interpret, and specifically dreams. And the thing that he does that really wins Pharaoh's heart forever is that he foresees and then foretells that there will be a famine in Egypt. And the Pharaoh puts him in charge of sort of preparing for the famine. And so not only do they store up enough food to get through the famine, but they store up enough food to sell to neighboring communities over the course of the famine, so that nobody will starve to death, and so that Egypt, under under this Pharaoh with Joseph's leadership will grow to be even more wealthy than it would otherwise. So what would be a tragedy and could have brought down the Egyptians, this famine, becomes something that actually raises them up even more. In all of this, we presume, and I would think rightly so, this is the narrative, this is the story that we're here to learn. All this is God's work. So we can get into the whole discussion about whether, famine itself is the will of God, or whether famine itself was the result of the providential system that God had established. And it's one of those all things work for those who love God and are called according to his purpose things. I tend to view everything through that viewpoint, whereas the overarching, God has this perfect plan that always happens exactly perfectly because we're puppets and don't have free will. You can't have it both ways. So, well, you can, but it takes some theological gymnastics that I'm too out of shape to do. So that's where we are. The most recent thing that's happened is, as I said, the brothers have gone to Egypt to buy food, and the person that they come to, the person in charge of selling the food, is Joseph, but they don't recognize Joseph because a number of years have passed and he looks differently enough that they don't recognize him, but he certainly recognizes them. And that's fair. It's much easier to recognize 11 of your brothers than it is for 11 of your brothers to recognize you, I suppose. That's the story anyway. Maybe he had some Clark Kent sunglasses on and they are not sunglasses, but glasses. So when they first went down, I'm just trying to get us caught back up to where we were. When they first went down, they sent everybody except for Benjamin, because Benjamin is now Jacob's favorite. Now that Joseph is gone, Benjamin is Jacob's favorite. And Benjamin is the only other child from Rachel. So basically, in Jacob's eyes and Jacob's heart, if he loses Benjamin after having lost Joseph, he will have lost everything that's important to him. In other words, he is still showing this favoritism. And somebody mentioned last week, and I forget now who it was. I feel like maybe it was... I think maybe it was Sue. I can't remember who, but somebody said it seemed like favoritism was just kind of a normalized thing in this time period. And I don't know. I don't know enough about this particular culture. I will confess that I have not studied it deeply enough to know, but I agree with you. It does seem that way. It does sort of echo some of the favoritism that God showed toward Abel's offering, although in that case, God wasn't saying, I really like Abel better than Cain. He was saying to Cain, hey, yeah, I liked his offering better. What do you want? I just liked it better. If you want me to like your offering as much as his, make a better offering. But what is probably going on, as a friend of mine shared with me, is that there is a sense of favoritism in the Old Testament, and that God has a favorite group of people, and surprise, it's the Israelites. And so the narrative, the story echoes the feeling, the belief, certainly that the Israelites had, that God favored them. And then again, you kind of look at the plight of the Israelites. They start from basically just Abraham, an old man and an old woman, or middle-aged or whatever, being promised the birth of a child after being barren past childbearing years, and they have a son, and that son has a son, and the story is very heroic, except for all the cases and where everybody acts like anything except for a hero, and they prevail. And so if you have this theology, this Deuteronomistic theology, and I know we're not in Deuteronomy yet, but we'll get there. Well, we won't with this study, but you will get there on your own, surely. This belief that when you do good things happen to you. When you do bad things happen to you. Since good things are happening to the Israelites, it does appear that God favors the Israelites. Now, in this particular case, I think you could argue that it should appear to people like God favors the Egyptians, because God gave them Joseph, who was able to interpret the signs and make sure that nobody starved. And Egypt is growing in influence and in finance and in the things that matter to the people of the day. So it really is very interesting. There's a lot going on. We could get even deeper and move even more slowly, but I think that's a fair thing to note, that favoritism itself does not only seem like it might be normalized at the time, and let's be honest, that's part of the human condition. And I don't want to say that God is bound to the human condition, but if we're made in the image of God, I don't know. I'm probably going down a rabbit hole I don't want to go to right now. My friend that I discussed theology with is a bit more of a Calvinist than I am, and we don't agree on everything. But I thought it was a fair point, and as I was looking over some of the comments that you guys made last time, I did want to at least mention my friend's thoughts on that, and we'll move forward from here. Okay, so they send 10 brothers, not 11, because they kept Benjamin at home because Jacob could not fathom the possibility of losing his son. So they all go to let me make sure. I don't want to say this wrong. I wanted to make sure I was ready for what we were doing today, and I should have gone back. Well, let's remember one thing as well. One of the brothers stays back with them because Joseph wants to see Benjamin. He wants to see all the brothers reunited and there together. There's something else going on here as well. He wants to see if his father is willing to let Benjamin go. He wants to see if this favoritism is still being played out. And of course, he learns the favoritism is being played out because Benjamin wasn't sent, and he knows why Benjamin wasn't sent. But he's got them over a barrel, more or less, right? They're going to starve to death. And so he gives them a little bit of food, and he also puts their money back on the top of their food sacks. And halfway home, they realize that the money is still there. And when they get back to their father, they've left one of their brothers behind as sort of collateral to come back. And they say, we've got to bring Benjamin with us when we go again. And Joseph just isn't hearing it, but finally he decides that it has to happen. And so he sends them back with all the silver that they brought back that they were supposed to have paid for the first round of food, with enough money for the second round of food as well, so that this servant of Pharaoh's that they don't know is Joseph won't think that they stole from him and throw him into jail. So that's where we are, okay? So now we're coming up to 43:16. When Joseph saw Benjamin with them, so they've come back, they want more food. They brought Benjamin, as they said, so they can get their other brother out of prison. They can pay for the new food, visit with Joseph, and then everybody can go home happy. They'll have their food. Again, they don't know it's Joseph, but Joseph knows it's them, and everything will be fine. But they are concerned. They are really weirded out by the fact that the money was still there, and they're scared to death that this servant of Pharaoh's might do something rash, thinking that they had stolen the money. So they're coming back. And when Joseph saw Benjamin with them, he said to the steward of his house, "Bring the men into the house and slaughter an animal and make ready, for the men are to dine with me at noon." The man did as Joseph said and brought the men to Joseph's house. Now the men were afraid because they were brought to Joseph's house, and they said, "It's because of our money replaced in our sacks the first time that we have been brought in, so that he may have an opportunity to fall upon us, to make slaves of us, and take our donkeys." So they feel like they're being called to the big house. And they are being called to the big house, but not for the reason they think. Hey, Kim, good to see you. Evelyn, glad you are with us as well. So they went up to the steward of Joseph's house and spoke with him at the entrance to the house. They said, "Oh, my lord, we came down the first time to buy food, and when we came to the lodging place, we opened our sacks, and there was in each one's money in the top of his sack, our money in full weight, so we brought it back with us. Moreover, we've brought down with us additional money to buy food. We don't know who put the money back in our sacks." And he replied, "Rest assured, do not be afraid. Your God and the God of your father must have put the treasure in the sacks for you. I received your money." So put a pin on that. On the statement, "Don't be afraid, God must have done that because I received your money." It appears as if it is a lie, but it's not a lie if Joseph is looking at the overarching story. And if Joseph, in his heart and mind, believes he is doing what God has told him to do, then he's basically saying, "I've received my payment." And he's not lying. He did receive the money, right? It's not a technical lie. It's a technical truth. He received the money. He just gave it back. So the question is, why did he give it back? And then why doesn't he tell them, "Yeah, I gave it back to you"? What does he intend to get out of this? And we will find out. Or at least we're gonna put up a good guess. Then he brought Simeon out to them. I mentioned that one of their brothers had stayed back, and it was Simeon. When the steward had brought the men into Joseph's house and given them water, and they had washed their feet, and when he had given their donkeys fodder, they made the present ready for Joseph's coming at noon, for they had heard that they would dine there. When Joseph came home, they brought him the present that they had carried into the house, and they bowed to the ground before him. And therein is more of the fulfillment of the prophecy, the dream that Joseph had, that his brothers were bowing down before him. He inquired about their welfare and said, "Is your father well? The old man of whom you spoke, is he still alive?" Joseph clearly still cares about his father, and surely he loved his father and knew that his father loved him. His father was not complicit, obviously, in his supposed demise. And they bowed their heads and did obeisance. And we will find out in a later chapter that this is a step too far for Joseph. Joseph is not comfortable with them bowing down like that. That is a way that one should only honor God. And Joseph is not God in this passage of scripture. Joseph is not a stand-in for God, but I do think Joseph is a stand-in for, well, we'll get to that at the end. So he's uncomfortable with that. He looked up and saw his brother Benjamin, his mother's son, his full blood brother, and said, "Is this your youngest brother of whom you spoke to me? God be gracious to you, my son." And with that, Joseph hurried out because he was overcome with affection for his brother, and he was about to weep. So he went into a private room and wept there. Then he washed his face and came out, and controlling himself, he said, "Serve the meal." They served him by himself, and them by themselves, and the Egyptians who ate with him by themselves, because the Egyptians could not eat with the Hebrews, for that's an abomination to the Egyptians. When they were seated before him, the firstborn according to his birthright, and the youngest according to his youth, the men looked at one another in amazement. Now, this is a little passage of scripture that could just fly by without you thinking too much of it. Basically, Joseph had little place cards that, he's setting a nice dinner, and he had them all sit. And when they all sat down, they realized that they were sitting oldest to youngest. And how could Joseph possibly know which of them would be the oldest and which would be the youngest? Maybe he knew that, but how could he know everybody correctly in between? Of course, we know, and Joseph knows, but they don't know how that can happen. So at this point, they're just simply amazed that Joseph, they must think he really is a diviner of the truth. So portions were taken to them from Joseph's table, but Benjamin's portion was 5 times as much of any of theirs. So they drank and were merry with them. So here we have kind of an interesting scene as well, I think. We have the Egyptians who religiously can't eat with the Israelites. And we have Joseph sitting in the middle, sort of serving as a bridge between the two. And food even goes from his plate, served by the Egyptians, to the Israelites. He's sort of an intermediary. He's an intercessory between these people. Who else do we know in our religious doctrinal faith that serves as an intercessor between two groups of beings, sort of being part of one and part of another, and so being a bridge between the two? Any guesses? This is the part where you guess. And then he gives Benjamin 5 times as much as anybody else. Now, why does he do this? He's showing favoritism to Benjamin. He already knows that Benjamin is receiving favoritism. That's right, Ben, Janice, Kim, Jesus. So Joseph really is a messianic figure in this story. And in fact, throughout the entirety of the Old Testament, you will find messianic figures. I think I'm probably wrong because I'm forgetting somebody obvious, but I guess you could argue that Melchizedek, the priest, is sort of a stand-in for Christ at one point. I think that's probably fair, but I'll say that I think in this case, Joseph is one of the strongest messianic figures, absolutely, that we have seen so far in the Old Testament. There will be many more coming up in later books, but you can't miss that. You just can't miss all the places that Jesus is in the Old Testament, that the messianic figure is in the Old Testament. Okay, so back to the favoritism. So Joseph, unlike Christ, because Joseph is fully human and not also fully divine, he is playing games with them, but he's doing so with a purpose. And you can read this story of the way Joseph manipulates them, and we're going to see some even meaner things coming up. He's very manipulative of his brothers, and you wouldn't blame him for being so after what they did to him. You wouldn't blame him for much of anything, really. And there are some theologians who have interpreted this passage and just basically left it at Joseph is getting back at them for all that they've done. He's being mean to them because they were mean to him. What an empty interpretation. What are we supposed to learn from that? I'm tired of negative examples. I've turned much of what we've read about Abraham and Isaac and Jacob into examples of how not to be. I'm tired of that. So given that I have another clear way to interpret this story, I'm going to choose the different one this time. So I'm not going to say that Joseph is doing this to get even. I'm going to say Joseph is doing this for a very specific purpose, which is going to push him back towards that messianic role again, because it's really going to be, it's going to lead towards redemption, which is where Christ leads us all. Okay, Genesis 44. Then he commanded the steward of his house, fill them in sacks with food, as much as they can carry, and put each man's money in the top of his sack. Put my cup, the silver cup, in the top of the sack of the youngest, with his money for the grain. And he did as Joseph told him. So if you need that interpreted a little bit more for you, he gives them the food again, as much as they can carry, gives them back all their money again, all of it, and then he's got this special cup. It's a very special cup. It's the Holy Grail of this story. It's not the Holy Grail, but it's the Holy Grail of this story. It's a very special cup, and he sticks it in the pack of the youngest. Well, who's the youngest? It's Benjamin, Jacob's favorite son, now that Joseph is no more. As soon as the morning was light, the men were sent away with their donkeys. When they'd only gone a short distance from the city, Joseph said to his steward, "Go follow after the men, and when you overtake them, say to them," I like this, by the way. I want to look at something really fast. Okay, the Hebrew for here is Radoth. And now I want to open up New Revised Parallel Texts. And I want to go to Psalm 23. Why is it starting with 151? What is going on? Hang on a second. Oh, it's going to the end. Oh my goodness. Hang on a second. I'll do it this way. Psalm 23 Hebrew. Just give me the text, people. Oh, okay. This is really annoying. My software is not doing what it's supposed to do. Why? Okay. Okay. Just to give you a little perspective, follow is such a poor translation here. And I want to go somewhere where it's also a very poor translation just to prove a point. The end of the 23rd Psalm. You prepare a table before me in the presence of my enemies. You anoint my head with oil. My cup overflows. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life. And that word follow is radaf. Okay. So now we're going to go back to Genesis. (43). And he says, go follow Radoth after the men. Well, what do you think of when you think, right, his silver Yeti, his favorite cup. What do you think of when you think of following? I think of like following an equal distant behind and kind of watching them and doing what they're doing. And I think that's the idea that we get out of the 23rd Psalm. Goodness and mercy will follow me. Wherever I go, they're going to be back there. But this man wasn't sent to just follow them. He was sent to pursue them. He was sent to overtake them. That's what Radoth means in Hebrew. It doesn't mean like follow the leader. It means overtake, pursue. It says, go Radoth, go follow, go pursue after the men. And when you overtake them, so I just, I say all the time in the 23rd Psalm that surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life is a poor translation. And it is. The word should be pursue. That's the idea. Anyway. He sends his steward to pursue them and to overtake them and to say, why have you returned evil for good? Why have you stolen my silver cup? Is it not from this cup that my Lord drinks? Does he not intend to use it for divination? You've done wrong in doing this. So again, it looks like Joseph is playing games. He's got something in mind, but I'm going to give him the benefit of the doubt. You can interpret this how you want. I'm going to say he's got something in plan, something in mind plan, very specific. When he overtook them, he repeated these words to them, and they said to him, why does my Lord speak with such words as these? Far be it from your servants that they should do such a thing. Look, the money that we found at the top of our sacks, we brought it back to you from the land of Canaan. Why would we steal silver or gold from your Lord's house? Should it be found with any one of your servants, let him die. Moreover, the rest of us will become my Lord's slaves. Way more than what's required in their legal system at the time. But they know beyond a shadow of a doubt that they're innocent. So they're willing to just throw out some big promises. The servant says, even so, in accordance with your words, let it be. He with whom it is found shall become my slave. but the rest of you shall go free. So he says, no death required. I don't need all of you to be slaves. Just whoever took it, come back. You're going to have to be my slave. Not for me, but for Joseph. Joseph has decreed this, so you're going to be Joseph's slave. And so they know they're clear. So each one quickly lowered his sack to the ground, and each opened his sack. He searched, beginning with the eldest and ending with the youngest, and the cup was found in Benjamin's sack. At this, they tore their clothes. Each one loaded his donkey, and they returned to the city. In other words, they did not dare go home to Jacob and say, yeah, it happened again with the money, and this time, yeah, he took Benjamin. Your biggest fear came true. They're not doing that. They're all going straight back to Joseph, and they're going to settle it once and for all, whatever they have to do. They're not going to go back to their father. But notice the difference in how they treat Jacob's new favorite, Benjamin. Clearly, their hearts have been turned. They have felt horrible over the years, I'm assuming, of what they did to their brother, of how they led to their brother's death, although, of course, we know he's not really dead. In fact, he's the one that they're communicating with right now. But, the old brothers, the brothers back in Joseph's time would have just said, dude stole the cup. That tough on him. That's not the case here, of course. They're in despair. The tearing of the clothes is a very visual sign of mourning. It lets everybody know that you are in deep mourning. Judah and his brothers came to Joseph's house while he was still there, and they fell to the ground before him. Joseph said to them, "What deed is this that you have done?" He's quite the actor, isn't he? "Do you not know that one such as I can practice divination?" And Judah said, "What can we say to my lord? What can we speak? How can we clear ourselves? God has found the guilt of your servants. Here we are then, my lord's slaves, both we and also the one in whose possession the cup has been found." What's going on here is they evidently do believe that Benjamin took the cup. I'm sure Benjamin told them he didn't take it, but they're not arguing. They're not saying, look, we didn't steal the cup. He didn't steal the cup. This is a mistake. They're saying, hey, God's found out the guilt of your servants. We're guilty. We're here. Let's do it. We're your slaves too, both we and also the one in whose possession the cup has been found. But he said, far be it from me. He's so gracious. Far be it from me that I should do so. Only the one in whose possession the cup was found shall be my slave. But as for you, go up in peace. Shalom to your father. Which, of course, is something they cannot do. They cannot go to Jacob without Benjamin and bring him any peace. And they know that. So now it's Judah who steps up, and this speech, this monologue, this soliloquy that we'll have from Judah is the longest monologue in the entirety of the book of Genesis. And he says, "My Lord, let your servant speak a word in my Lord's ears, and do not be angry with your servant, for you are like Pharaoh himself. My Lord asked his servants, saying, 'Have you a father or a brother?' And we said to my Lord, 'We have a father, an old man, and a young brother, the child of his old age. His brother is dead. He alone is left of his mother's children, and his father loves him. Then you said to your servants, bring him down to me so that I may set my eyes upon him. We said to my Lord, the boy cannot leave his father, for if he should leave his father would die. Then you said to your servants,'" I love this recap. It's perfectly placed. "Then you said to your servants, unless your youngest brother comes down with you, you shall see my face no more." Meaning, bring him back or you starve to death of the famine. It's your choice. "When we went back to your servant, my father, we told him the words of my Lord. And when our father said, 'Go again, buy us a little food,' we said, 'We cannot go down. Only if our youngest brother goes with us will we go down. For we cannot see the man's face unless our youngest brother is with us.' Then your servant, my father, said to us, 'You know that my wife bore me 2 sons. One left me,'" Joseph, "and I said, 'Surely he's been torn to pieces, and I have never seen him since. If you take this one also from me, and harm comes to him, you will bring down my gray hairs in sorrow to Sheol. Now therefore, when I come to your servant my father, and the boy is not with us, then as his life is bound up in the boy's life, when he sees that the boy is not with us, he will die. and your servants will bring down the gray hairs of your servant our father with sorrow to Sheol. For your servant became the surety for the boy to my father, saying, if I don't bring him back to you, then I will bear the blame in the sight of my father all my life. He's saying, I can't go back without him. I'm not leaving him. I'm not leaving him. Do you see the redemption? Do you see the change? And Judah did speak up for Joseph before, but he still let it happen, right? He may have had better intentions, but now his mind is set. He's not going to leave. This is a beautiful, beautiful story of redemption, and it couldn't happen if Joseph didn't allow it to happen. And that's why I say that we can finally take off the cynical hat and say that Joseph is a rascal like the rest of them, telling lies to get even and do all that. That's not what it's about. Joseph is setting up a chance for redemption. And the brothers this time, and Judah speaking for the brothers specifically, he is going to embrace that chance of redemption. So while Joseph is still serving as the messianic figure in this story, keep in mind, not that I think it's of particular import to what we're talking about right now, just keep in mind that from Judah comes David and eventually Jesus. Eventually. There's some, obviously, generations in between there. Now, therefore, please let your servant remain as a slave to my lord in place of the boy. Let the boy go back with his brothers. For how can I go back to my father if the boy is not with me? I fear to see the suffering that would come upon my father. And that is actually where we're going to stop tonight. Yep, Judah is speaking. Reuben did speak before in trying to save. He spoke up for Joseph, but again, not compellingly enough. But yeah, it is Judah who is speaking here, and I don't know why exactly. I don't know why it's Judah, but it's important that it's Judah, or it's significant that it's Judah. I don't think in this particular commentary that I looked at this evening that it says anything about why it's Judah. But yeah, it's Judah. So good point, Ben. So by Joseph setting this whole thing up, I think I said what I wanted to teach out of this lesson, what I wanted you to take with you. Joseph places Benjamin in a relationship to his brothers very similar to the relationship that Joseph was in with his brothers, to see if they've changed, to see if they've grown, to see if they're to see if they're decent people, I guess, to see if they're worthy, to give them a chance for redemption. And we're going to have a beautiful reunion coming up in Genesis 45, but it's going to be a couple weeks before we get to that. So in the meantime, I would encourage you to spend a little time in the rest of Genesis, maybe read ahead a little bit so that if you have any questions, you could ask them, and maybe I could even do some research before we get back together and answer those questions. So feel free to message them to me or email them. I'm going to read the first 3 verses of the next chapter. Then Joseph could no longer control himself before all those who stood by him, and he cried out, "Send everyone away from me." So no one stayed with him when Joseph made himself known to his brothers. And he wept so loudly that the Egyptians heard it, and the household of Pharaoh heard it. And Joseph said to his brothers, "I am Joseph. Is my father still alive?" But his brothers could not answer him. So dismayed were they at his presence. So he is obviously moved. Judah's passion and this incredulous speech that he makes, this literary masterpiece, not just in the way that it wraps up everything important that's happened for the reader, but in the stage that it sets for Joseph to understand. For Joseph, if we go back, you remember Joseph had 2 dreams. And in the second dream, the sun and the moon also bowed down to him, and not just the stars in the heaven, meaning it was his parents. And even Jacob says something sarcastic to him, like, "Oh, you're going to be so mighty that we're going to bow down to you? Get out of here." So one wonders what Joseph... One wonders if Joseph wondered. I'll say that. I wonder if Joseph wondered what his father thought. And so through this recollection of the story, Joseph finds out that his father loved him so much, that his father is so heartbroken at having lost Joseph, that the thought of losing another son, well, another specific son at least, is enough to completely break him. So this is I think this is a little redemptive for Joseph as well. We need to keep this in mind as we look through the Old Testament. As I said, I think it's really important to look out for the messianic figures in the Old Testament. But we need to remember that they're just messianic figures. They're not the Messiah. They're not Christ. They're not perfect. They all have extreme human failings. And Joseph has some extreme human failings as well. But we'll just leave it at that. This is a beautiful story that I think is redemptive of the whole story of Genesis so far. I really think up until now, the story has been God can use every scoundrel that's ever existed because that's all that exists are scoundrels. And now I think in Joseph we have a good man who creates a situation not to shame his brothers, but to redeem his brothers. That's it. That's all I got. Everybody okay with that? Thank you, Susan. I appreciate that. Janice, thank you. Ben, thank you, everybody. Get back in the swing of things. And then when we finish Genesis, we're going to move into the book of Acts, and I'm excited about that as well. I'm also thinking, talk about that another time. All right, well, that's it for tonight then. So thanks for hanging out with me. Have a good week. Have a good couple of weeks. Stay out of the heat. Stay cool. And God bless, Godspeed. And as always, thanks for watching.